Yesterday, Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker of the House of Commons, did something out of character. He moved away from convention, and there was a motion by the SNP calling for a ceasefire in Gaza, and he allowed a Labour amendment as well as a government amendment to that motion, which effectively stopped the SNP voting on their own amendment or voting on their own motion, and it descended into chaos. From his point of view, it was a way he thought he suggested it was a way to allow greater debate. It also stopped a full-scale rebellion from the Labour Party. So from that point of view, it might be seen as the Speaker of the House of Commons favouring the Labour Party, helping Sir Keir Starmer out of a difficult fix. The Labour amendment was for a ceasefire with conditions, which was eventually approved without a vote. And even without that vote, that seems rather strange. Rees-Mogg said he could hear dissension, voices of dissension, which would normally mean that there is a vote. Hoyle said that he made his decision because he was concerned about the security of MPs and their families and threats which have been issued in the past. I regret that it's ended up in this position. It was never my intention. I did not want it to end like this. And he then wanted to meet party leaders, chief whips, to have a discussion on what is the best way forward. At one point, there was a vote to see there was a motion to see whether or not the House of Commons could be sitting in private. That means all television cameras, all recording switched off, all the public removed. That hasn't really happened since the last war. It has happened in 2000 or something, but in principle, it hasn't really happened since the last war, when it was created in order to stop Nazi spies eavesdropping on the deliberations in Parliament. And some people have asked whether or not Hoyle's concern about MP security was the reason for his move. One Conservative peer thinks that if that's not the case, it's a democratic crisis. And Penny Mordaunt was particularly irritated, withdrew the government amendment. The government will play no further part in the decision this House takes on proceedings. At about that time, members of the Conservative Party and members of the SNP walked out of the chamber. Regrettably, Mr. Speaker, said Mordaunt, has inserted himself into the row and undermined the confidence of the House, which is quite extraordinary. Stephen Flynn said, I would take significant convincing that your position is now not intolerable. Stephen Flynn, of course, is one of the few people in the Commons who speaks without notes and speaks with authority. It's a great opportunity. Simply speaking with authority, of course, is not necessarily to follow a logical argument. The argument from authority is a logical fallacy as much as the ad hominem, ad populum, and strawman fallacy. So just because somebody has authority or has the illusion of authority doesn't mean they're right. But I would give Stephen Flynn a lot more time than I would give to many other MPs. And surely Hoyle had taken into consideration the fact that MPs would be angry about his decision, but the break with convention, and also the fact that he was given advice not to do it, is unusual. I was going to say is extraordinary, but apparently I'm using that word too often. So, and I'm not going to say that I'm surprised, but I am disappointed. Convention and routine, tradition plays an important part in our history. We don't have a written constitution. And simply because something is done traditionally is a great way of defending it. The in that, for example, a lot of the Eastern churches appeal to tradition rather than authority. And I think to look back and say, well, traditionally this is not done. Well, traditions can change, of course, and new traditions can be implemented. But with an eye on the past and with an eye on what is routine, you don't change a tradition without significant consideration, because the new reality, you then set a precedent, and that is the new reality. So now there is a tradition, there's a new tradition, that the Speaker can overrule the traditions of the House. And the precedent has now been made. So when the Speaker is challenged, when there is more deliberation, it's either a matter of the Speaker completely backing down, or a new tradition has been created, and future speakers will have significantly more power to side with one group in the House of Commons rather than another. And that is significant.